Hello again, whiskey friends. Thanks for joining me today, everybody, for another Tuesday discussion. So, here on the channel, we do like to generate content based on comments and questions that we're getting either from Patreon, YouTube, or from Instagram. And for this particular video, we are going to handle the question, what are some of the most surprising pours of 2023? So now that we're at the end of the year, it's a good time to have some retrospection. And before we get into any top 10 lists or anything like that, hey, let's handle questions like this. I like it. So these won't necessarily be any pours that are on my top 10 list. That's not the point of today's video. The point of today's video is to highlight 5 bottles that were surprising. Essentially, 5 bottles that I didn't know I was going to like or like them far, far more than my initial expectations. So thank you for joining me today, whiskey friends. Let's kick off the show. All right. So, as I was saying off the top, we are going to highlight 5 surprising bottles for 2023, things that I found most surprising. Now, to define surprising, it's not about scoring the highest, it's even not about having expectations that were exceeded or significantly exceeded. It's more highlighting brands and bottles that at the beginning of 2023, I didn't know that those bottles were going to exist. And then when I bought them and tried them, I fell in love with them. And now I intend to buy more of that bottle or more from that brand. So, in that regards, it's surprising. I kind of went in kind of ignorant and came out with more knowledge, more expectations, and more smiles on my face. So, now let's get into the 5 bottles to highlight for today. The first one I'm going to get into here may be a bit divisive, but man, I really want people to give this one a try. We got the Copper and Kings Bourbon. So, what impresses me most about this Copper and Kings Bourbon is A, the price. So, we're looking at $60 to $65 for a finished Kentucky bourbon. And the other thing that really impresses me about this is that there's decent age stocks in this blend, whereas most apple brandy finished products that cost $60 to $65 are typically going to be 4 to 5 years in age, and the finishing almost sometimes comes across as if they're hiding the youth through the finishing. Not with this one. If memory serves, I mean, I think the youngest thing in this might be 7 years. I think there was 9 years. Then you get into double digits. I want to say all the way up to 15 years, but maybe I'm remembering wrong. But that's the impressive thing about this. And it comes across in the taste. It has these deep, rich, dark flavors. And then the apple brandy comes over the top. Now, some people I have talked to feel like it is over finished. I don't think so. I love Copper and Kings brandy to begin with. It's also made by Copper and Kings. Of course, they're going to highlight the brandy as much as they can. That's what they do. But the fact that they came out with this in the first place and came out with it at such a reasonable price, I think it's worth checking out. And when this bottle is done, I do intend to buy another. Now, this bottle got so low because I did a little bit of an experiment with some apple cider recently on Halloween. And I wanted to see what goes better in the apple cider to make it hard apple cider. The Copper and Kings, the apple brandy finish, doubling down on the apple, or an Amburana finish bourbon. The Amburana totally won that. The cinnamon and the apple was awesome. You didn't come here for that, but that's just a little aside. So let's go with the second bottle on the list here. And this is going to be coming out of Columbus, Ohio. And this brand is called Whiskey War. Now, with Whiskey War, what they're doing here is essentially a blend of Indiana rye and Indiana bourbons. And as you can see on this one, then they double oaked that blend. I did have the lovely experience of helping pick a barrel earlier this year, and that's actually what I have in my hands as well. But through that experience, I had had some whiskey war prior to that, but I hadn't really committed to a bottle. I had a sample pack that I got from the distillery, but I didn't really recognize the brand, didn't really recognize what they were doing with their blends and then the finishing on top of it. And I think the first time that I tried it, I didn't even know it was a boo rye, which then led me down a road to weird expectations and conclusions. And then once I started realizing what it was and appreciating it for what it was, and now, we've been getting so into blending lately too. That all came together then for this to be one of my very surprising pours of the year. I do love this bottle, not just because I had a hand in picking it. It's just actually a really, really good barrel. And it's got sprinkles. Who doesn't love sprinkles in their whiskey every now and then? The third one on the list really surprised me because I debated whether to buy it at all. I've still got to complete my review on this one as of recording this video. But I'm going to put it up there because, yeah, it's grading out higher than I ever would have expected. I love it a lot. And I love it for very odd reasons that I wouldn't have expected either. But we got the Penelope 9-year. So with this Penelope 9-year, gosh, the things that are surprising about this one, I mean, there's a whole laundry list. It's 9 years old, but this is technically Penelope's biggest release since being bought out by MGP, and the brand is now an MGP brand. But then this is a blend of Indiana and Kentucky whiskeys. And even more surprising is the mash bill on the back because it's 85% corn, 10% rye, 2% wheat, 3% malted barley. And I try to go through all that in my head, and I'm trying to imagine the mash bills, and like, did they blend with Indiana bourbons? Like, or did they blend with light whiskeys? And then I look at it and it says a blend of straight bourbon whiskeys. So I think that would throw out the light whiskey part of it. So I can't figure out how they got to those ratios unless it's a whole lot more Kentucky than I think it is, which then becomes even more confusing. In terms of what was surprising on this one, the mouthfeel on this thing is like nuts. It's like almost got the mouthfeel of melted butter. Like if you put like butter in the microwave or melted it, however you're going to melt butter. And you let that run across your tongue because who's not taking shots of butter? That sounds totally healthy. But that texture is what I get off of this Penelope 9-year. So that's immediately surprising. And then the finish just goes for days, probably a part of that mouthfeel and the oiliness of it. And the flavors are really, really good too. So I went from being skeptical when I heard about the Penelope 9-year, heard a little bit of buzz, but didn't get too into it, saw it on the shelf, debated whether to buy it, brought it home, and then it blew me away. There you go. Surprising pour. All right, we got 2 bottles left on the list here. The next one, you're not going to be too surprised to see this because I have been talking about it on the channel most of the year now, ever since August, coming back from Baltimore. But it is the Old Line American Single Malts. So with the Old Line here, and this is particularly a pick I got from a bar down in Baltimore, but these are American single malts that they are getting from a distillery in Columbus, Ohio. I've got 2 Columbus things on this list. Just now coming to that realization. This is Baltimore, though, officially, but 2 things that were distilled in Ohio. That's pretty surprising. Okay, I'm going off on a tangent. But with this Old Line, got to try this for the first time on Sagamore Farms at the Mash and Journey meetup. And really, really liked all the samples that he had at his tent. It was my favorite thing there. I ultimately bought a bottle of it at the Mash and Journey event, and then went to a bar and they had a single barrel pick. which is in my hands. It tastes like Hershey syrup. It is amazing. It is one of my favorite American single malts. And I didn't even know Old Line existed prior to August 2023. And now I talk about Old Line all the time, thus its inclusion on this list. So that was an American single malt. Now we're going to get into probably the most surprising part of 2023. Oy vey, this brand and all the blinds and all the crazy things Kelsey's done to us. But it's the JT Malik coming out of Louisiana. This is a single barrel cask strength rice whiskey. A rice whiskey. What is so surprising about this one? Every time we have tried this blind, we think it is a bourbon and we think it is one of the heritage distilleries, typically Buffalo Trace. On a lot of these single barrels, we continue to get a cherry note, and that very distinct, deep cherry note is that marker for Buffalo Trace. Very few distilleries have it in the same way the Buffalo Trace has it. And over again, we keep calling this thing Buffalo Trace when we get in blinds. So at this point, I've gotten to try 6 to 7 single barrels of JT Malik in 2023 and loved all of them. And why is that surprising? Well, it's a rice whiskey. If you would have told me that I would have liked rice whiskey entering 2023, I would have said no. But now here we are talking about it, and it's the number one surprise on my list. So those are my 5 surprises of 2023. Would love to hear what your surprises are. So let us know in the comments what brands and what bottles surprised you in 2023 on your own whiskey journey. Well, that concludes today's video, everybody. If you have something that we'd like to cover on a future Tuesday, also let us know that in the comments as well. So thank you for joining me today, whiskey friends. I'll catch you on the next Tuesday discussion. Goodbye, everybody.
Jeff, just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello again. Oh, Jeffrey, you should just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello